The main ingredient is a fusion rifle that combines a 740 charge time with good damage, range, and impact. Many of the fusion rifles in this game, like any other weapons are just in Destiny 2, are just balanced based on damage and fire rate. In this case, it's damage and charge time, or damage per bolt and charge time. The longer charge time fusion rifles result in more damage per bolt, and then the lower charge time fusion rifles result in less damage per bolt. The way weapons are balanced in Destiny 2 makes it to where neither of the extremes I really like generally. Like, I usually don't like the very fast rate of fire weapons or the very slow rate of fire weapons. I generally like the weapons that are in the middle, and the main ingredient is kind of like that, but for the fusion rifles it's in the middle, where it has a moderate charge time but it also still has good damage. There are fusion rifles that have charge times in the 600s or the 500s even, and there's some that have charge times in the 800s. So the main ingredient sits at a 740 charge time, so it fits nicely in the middle. Each fusion rifle shoots 6 bolts per shot, and the amount of bolts you land on the target determines your damage. And the main ingredient will deal 48 damage per bolt, meaning it will take 4 to 5 bolts to kill, depending on the target's resilience. If the resilience is 3 or less, it will die in 4 bolts. If the resilience is greater than 3, it will take 5 bolts. The amount of bolts that you kill in kind of determines the consistency of the weapon. If the weapon requires you land all 6 bolts to kill, it's going to be very inconsistent, because just the way the weapon works, so you have to aim perfectly to land all 6 shots. You can't be getting shot really, because the flinch really affects your bolts. If you get shot and flinch a bit and then one bolt misses with some of the faster charge time fusion rifles, you're going to actually have to shoot another burst, and that's going to consume another bullet, which is kind of important for PvP, but it's also just going to take longer, and it's very likely you'll die if you have to shoot out multiple charges. Whereas with the main ingredient, you could generally shoot out just one charge and get the kill if you're aiming well. Like I said, things like flinch, things like range. Obviously, the further away the target is, the more the spread of the bolts will take effect, and if you have to land all 6 bolts, it's very unlikely that you'll be able to get any decently ranged shots. Whereas with the main ingredient, I actually do get what I consider long range shots for a fusion rifle, like shots that I feel like I shouldn't be able to get, but I am able to get with the main ingredient. The main ingredient's necessity to only land 4 to 5 of the bolts makes it just more consistent, in my opinion. Fusion rifles we'll talk about next that only require 4 bolts all the time are more consistent, but they have a longer charge time, whereas this one kind of combines a decent charge time with consistency. Fusion rifles that can really compete with the main ingredient in terms of consistency and range are Shock and Awe and Untitled FR4. I believe I said that right, I don't know. Both of these fusions will deal 52 damage per bolt, meaning they will only require 4 bolts to kill or less, depending if the target's weak. But if versus a full health opponent, regardless of the resilience, it'll always be 4 bolts to kill, but the trade-off is charge time. They both have an 860 charge time, while the main ingredient is 740. 740 is lower than 860, so the main ingredient will charge faster. And in many cases, that one less bolt won't matter, so the main ingredient is actually going to do better in most cases than both of these fusion rifles. I personally think the difference in charge time isn't worth the slight upgrade in consistency. You will see with the one less bolt per shot, you probably will be more consistent in some situations, but the main ingredient is already consistent enough for me, and I rarely have situations where it screws me over. The main ingredient also has more stability than these two, and I don't really know if stability affects flinch yet, but if it does, that makes the main ingredient even more advantaged, because flinch is the main issue with fusion rifles. As you're charging the fusion rifle, it's almost guaranteed that the target's going to shoot at you, causing you to flinch, and if your aim isn't good already, if your aim is already slightly bad and then the flinch throws it off even more, it's very likely that you'll miss too many bolts and that you won't be able to get that kill. So if the main ingredient's increased stability actually makes it to where it has less flinch when getting shot, that would make it even more consistent in those two, and just in terms of landing shots. I like to aim kind of lower torso with fusion rifles in this game, especially something like the main ingredient or the Shock and Awe, the longer charge time ones, where you're definitely going to be getting shot and definitely going to be flinching. If you aim lower torso towards the crotch area, and then you flinch, you're going to flinch up towards their chest, which is the larger part of their body, which is where your aim is going to be best if you want to land more bolts. If you want to land as many bolts as possible, you aim for the chest. But since flinch is a thing, I aim lower chest, and then I flinch up to their chest, and then I generally get the kill. I think the main ingredient is the best fusion rifle in Destiny 2's PvP because it combines high consistent damage with a high charge rate. It isn't on the extreme end of damage versus charge time balance, and it sits in the middle, and that's why it does just everything well. The ones that charge too fast have very low damage, and they're very inconsistent, and they have very low range because you have to land all 6 bolts, and you can really only do that in extreme close ranges, and at that point I would rather just use a shotgun. And then the extremely long charge time fusion rifles, they're very consistent, they hit very hard, but obviously you have the aspect of a very long charge time. The main ingredient fusion rifle can be obtained from Zavala by turning in strike tokens, and it's just another weapon in Destiny 2 that can be rewarded if you grind strikes. Like I've made in a previous video, strikes rewards in this game are absurdly good from Zavala, so you should definitely be leveling him up. because there's weapons like Nightshade, Nameless Midnight, The Last Dance, Origin Story, and now Main Ingredient. All of these weapons can be obtained from Zavala, so you should definitely be leveling him up and trying to get these weapons. That's going to be it for this video, guys. In short, Main Ingredient is a very consistent fusion rifle in Destiny 2's PvP. Because it sits in the middle of the spectrum, it has a good charge time and it also has good damage and range, whereas most of the other fusion rifles in this game, you have to pick one or the other. With the Main Ingredient, you can do everything well. And that's it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you found it useful.
Don't be lost. What can stop you if you fight together? Nothing. I could not ask for a better victory. You fight like a demon for